Are you ready to connect? This is the Empower Connection podcast, where we empower our listeners to connect more fully to themselves, to each other, and to something greater. We do this with the help of myself and special guests, including healers, coaches, artists, seekers, and those on a healing journey of self-growth. Welcome. Hello, what is up, everyone? This is Damodar Cordua, the host of the Empower Connection podcast, where we help our listeners empower themselves to connect to themselves, to others, and to something even deeper. And in today's podcast, I think we're going to be focusing on connecting to ourselves and connecting to something deeper with this interview that we have with Sonia Karas. Sonia Karas is a wonderful energy worker, yoga teacher, storyteller, and mantra meditation leader from the Lancaster, Pennsylvania area. And this podcast tunes in to the more subtle landscape of ourself. And Sonia's language is really evocative, really beautiful, very eloquent when talking about how we can become connected to ourselves as embodied beings, but then how we can actually go deeper into the expansiveness of who we really are as a soul. So we hear a little bit about her journey, and then we hear a little bit about how she describes it and embodies it in her practices. We also go into the idea of what it means for ourselves as a soul to have a loving relationship with something bigger than ourselves, with spirit. So if you're attuned to that idea, this is a great podcast for you. What is it like to feel, experience, and give unconditional love, and to love fiercely? And then also, what is the student-teacher relationship like? And why are teachers in so many spiritual traditions so important? And especially from an Eastern perspective, what do they gift to us? And what is the sort of lens or paradigm within which we can look at teachers in our lives? Really exciting, really interesting subject matter I think you'll benefit from a lot. And then finally, if you listen to the end of the episode, she gives us a really beautiful little story. So she gives us some of her amazing storytelling at the end of the episode that will give you a lot of inspiration for your own healing journey. Okay, so excited for the episode, excited for you all to tune in. Please connect to me, Damodar, on Instagram at empowerconnection.me. And please share this if you like the episode, or leave a review, 5 stars, etc., etc. And then finally, stay tuned for the end of the episode after the interview for your unique Empowered Connection practice tool that you can bring back into your life and integrate some of the wisdom from the episode into your daily routine. All right, much love and enjoy. On this episode, I'm really excited to talk with Sonia Karas, who is a healer, energy worker, yoga teacher, and spiritual practitioner and enthusiast. Sonia is based in Lancaster and provides one-on-one energy work and healing sessions, as well as classes and group programs such as the Seeker's Table, Mother of Love, the Healer's Journey, and more. I just want to read these titles all day long. They're so evocative. Love these titles of her workshops. Sonia and I met in Philadelphia via our mutual love and appreciation of kirtan. Kirtan is call and response mantra meditation. Sonia is a wonderful kirtan wala or leader. And we also have mutual interest in yoga wisdom, and I know the stories of yoga. We're going to get into some of those things, I think, today. So I'm so excited to be with you today, Sonia, and I know our conversation is going to go into lots of beautiful places, and the listeners will gain a lot of value from the conversation. So thanks for coming on the show. How are you doing?
Oh my gosh, it is such a pleasure to be here, and especially with you. I said this to you the last time we spoke, but you're someone who I admire in a professional capacity, but in a personal one as well. So anytime we get to be together, whether we are singing and dancing or whether we're studying sacred scripture, it's always such a pleasure. So thank you.
Wonderful. And I feel the same. One thing I love about the spiritual wisdom of the East is that we see the best in others and we share it. So I appreciate your words, and I feel the same as well. So I'm inspired by what you do and inspired by what you present to the community. And one thing I had mentioned also to Sonia before we started this official recording is that when you or I or one looks at her body of work or her website, her content, for me, at least, it has a very mysterious and deep, like, inner journey of the self feel. I don't know if that's what she's going for, but that's what I'm feeling. And it's really for me, it's like, I want to know more. Like, either I want to get a session, or I want to bring her on my podcast so I can talk to her and learn more. So I would love to hear more about what you're focused on now, especially within this realm of energy work, energy healing.
I want to first receive that website feedback so fully, because I have cried over Squarespace many hours trying to like get all the pieces to fit. And I've had many moments of like completely redoing the whole thing to try to capture this feeling. And I think working in spiritually inclined professions, that's sometimes, for me at least, one of the biggest obstacles is, how do I take this incredible force, this magnitude, these experiences, these feelings, and distill them into words to try to express to someone who might want to work with me, like, what on earth that is. So that feels like a never-ending journey for me to capture it. But yeah, my spiritual life began in the Catholic Church, but then my own true inner spiritual journey began on a yoga mat. And that was about 10 years ago. And from that beginning experience encountering yoga, then kind of led me to reach and grasp for some of the other elements of like what a spiritual being and experience can be. And that eventually led me to energy work, so the modality of Reiki healing. And from there, it's kind of been a really fun exploration. And where I'm at now is deepening my understanding of both, to see where these different lineages and traditions actually intersect, to get as deep and authentic into the roots of like what it means to be a embodied human as I can possibly go.
That's beautiful. And I appreciate your starting with the yoga mat journey, because I do feel as though so many of us, at least maybe in our circles, a lot of us become healers or go deeper into our own healing through that gateway of yoga asana. And just thinking about others who are on the podcast or will be, I think a lot of us have entered in to understanding the self and our own journey through that asana practice. I know it's true for me. You know, I still teach yoga asana, but it actually has brought me to refine and explore more parts of myself than I ever realized. Not even in just the spiritual sense, which you might talk about in yoga asana, or the physical sense, which you might talk about in yoga asana, but in a lot of other ways. So I appreciate that. That's really interesting. And I also appreciate the intersection. I think that's one thing that we're trying to do on the podcast, is see where these things intersect, when these healing journeys, modalities, lifestyles, tools maybe intersect. So if I was to come to you, or why would I come to you? Well, it's like, why would I come to you? What would my need like? So if I'm a relationship coach, I do a lot of coaching work. Someone comes to me because they're looking to gain more tools and more resource for relational growth. Why would I come to you? What would be a reason, or what would be the reasons?
The $1 million question. But as I type my website, I'm like, what is it? But where I can like really distill it down the most is people who come to me are looking to deepen into connection, and they're seeking inner illumination and
Yeah,
transformation through the power of love. My work is so much heart centered because I am a heart centered being. So that's where it meets the heart.
I love it. I'm on the same vibe as a heart-centered practitioner, in the path of bhakti yoga, which is my spiritual practice, which is very much a heart-centered practice. So I really appreciate that. And I'm intrigued to hear where that journey of yours of the intersection with yoga wisdom, maybe heart-centered practices, and the healing that it's given you, and bringing it to others. Do you have any reflections on that, or any words to share that could be helpful to myself or any listeners?
Absolutely. And I'm asking for the grace to keep this within within a reasonable amount of time because I
Yeah.
feel
Yeah, we're trying to keep these episodes relatively short, but I'm sure we could talk for a long time.
oh my gosh, it's just yeah, this lifetime has had such an interesting journey and such an interesting story. But so when I arrived in yoga asana, I was confused, lost, scared. I didn't know what I was doing with my life. I hated my body. I felt very uncomfortable and unsafe in my body.
Hmm.
So the timing of encountering yoga asana, it was just the right moment with the right teacher at the right time. Um, I got so connected to it because I started to have this opportunity to feel how strong I was, to feel how soft I could be, and that my body actually could be this vehicle for knowing myself a little bit better, that it wasn't something I had to run away from or disassociate from, but that this body was really mine and that it was sacred and special. And so simultaneously at that moment, I also felt so limited by what I saw in the world around me, kind of some of the expectations that I felt were placed on me, of, who I was supposed to be, what my life should look like, what is success for someone
Mm.
like me. And none of it felt good. It all felt like pressure. It all felt like kind of a life sentence. I remember I was, really passionate about working in music, and I interned at Sony, and talking to some of the people about getting your foot into the door there, it was like, you're going to make no money. You're going to work 80 hours a week, and you'll be lucky if you get to do that. And I remember just thinking like that doesn't feel good to me, but I was like, what else is there?
Mm.
And so when I found the energy work, Reiki specifically, that was my first big encounter with I am so much more than this physical body.
Mm.
I'm so much more than just what I can see tangibly in the material universe before me, but I am vast, I am expansive, I am malleable. And that was so exciting because I was like, if I am not purely this dense three-dimensional thing, and my life doesn't have to be bound by the people who I'm seeing in my direct circle or the jobs that are like on my tabs to fill out applications for, I was like, what could this mean about the way my life feels?
Wow, it's beautiful. Yeah, I'm hearing you say that the yoga asana practice allowed you to feel held in your own physical presence as a body, embodied and healed and okay and strong and soft. And then from that space, you gained accessibility to start questioning your reality more, and then also to go even deeper to a place beyond what we see in this material world around us, like a deeper possibility of yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because that's what I appreciate about the yoga practice, is that it is both an embodied practice but it also deals with the mind. Well, like obviously, like in the Yoga Sutras and Bhagavad Gita, it's emphasized so much that yoga is about somehow moving past the mind to finding how we are actually divine. So it works in the body, and trauma stored in the body, it works in the mental platform, but then it can be a gateway to go even deeper into our potential of who we are as spiritual beings. So it sounds like energy work, I'm assuming receiving it and connecting to it as a practice kind of really expanded that space for you.
Absolutely. And it was, I think for me, the first time that I encountered spirit as something I can interact with, that I can build relationship with. Whereas my earlier understandings were, if you're bad, God will know. And that really was so hard for me to sit with. And so my very immature idea was like, well, let me just push that as far away as possible, and it won't have anything to do with me. But I realized that I could have a relationship with God, the divine and spirit. I could lean on God. I could love God and be loved. And I think ultimately, like what little Sonia wants is like to be loved ferociously. And when I realized that I could interact in this more subtle realm, I was like, oh yeah, tell me more about this. I'm hooked. I'm interested.
Yeah, it's like the from my tradition in Bhakti, which has a lot of parallels to this idea of relationship with the divine. You can actually have that. It's the idea of watering the roots of a tree. Like that relationship in that realm starts to inform the flowering of the tree, of the leaves and the fruit and the branches, right? So all the other aspects of ourself in the world. And that's what I'm hearing a little bit of when you're speaking, that this is like something I coined like the real. This is the deep longing of all of us. Little Damodar also wants to just be loved, to be loved unconditionally, and to have that reciprocation. I also had some time. I went to a Catholic all boys high school. As you talked about, this mood of like sin and being wrong and needing to be right in order for God to love us, and that there's a punishment if we're not right, not love. Whereas in probably some similar things that we practice, but I'll speak from my own tradition. That what's so like mind and heart blowing is that it's like God is not looking for that. Like God's actually sort of like, I punish you. Like that's a waste of my time. Like I just want to like hang out and love you. Like I'll let someone else do that. I'll like make this thing called karma, and that will take care of this idea of punishment. It's just the law of action reaction. I actually want to just know you and love you. Just like in the material world, we're all looking for love. Even people who are punishing, we actually see that behind those patterns is maybe perverted desire to be loved, and it's coming out in the wrong way.
I feel so similarly about the way that like God's loving eyes see us, because it's like, honestly, I'll speak for myself. I punish myself plenty for my misgivings.
Yeah.
So God doesn't even need to get
Yeah.
involved. If anything, God is the force who's like, Sonia, like it is okay if you've made a mistake. We can come back from this. And that's been so healing, to feel like, I can always move back to love. Love doesn't close its doors when it's like, ooh, you filled out your punch card of like messing it up. Sorry, try again. But can I stay open enough to returning again and again and again? Like that's the expansion for me, is can I receive unconditional love? Because that's something I realized on my path too, is that like unconditional love can be terrifying, when I've felt for so long that I need to hide parts of who I am, that I need to perform for love, because the true love of like the guru or of God like sees all of that and
Mhm.
somehow still loves all of that. And it's very exposing and it's very vulnerable. So my work is to cultivate the openness to be there for it.
Mm, that's beautifully put. Yeah, it's it goes back to what you were mentioning about we already punish. Well, you said you're speaking for yourself, but I think you can speak for all of us out there. We all can punish ourselves easily enough, and it's almost as though we feel part of us feels like we don't deserve that love, or we don't even know what that love is like, or we feel like because it's conditional, we have to hide parts of ourself to receive it. That parts of ourself aren't valid to receive it, you know. And it's interesting because I feel like that also often even happens in spiritual practices or institutions. Is sometimes people even take the regulations or practices or ideas and still try to like hide parts of themselves. I guess they call this like a spiritual bypassing, like so that we're not actually being fully vulnerable because it's difficult to be open with who we really are and what we're going through, and also to allow that to be seen by another and met with love, you know. Yeah, we have both mentioned early before we got on the podcast officially. um Sonia had mentioned talking about this idea of teachers in our lives, because she had mentioned just a moment ago the idea of guru. And today is a special day because it's my teacher's birthday, which is a day that we give kind of like our consciousness to the relationship that I might have with my teacher. So it's great. As they would say in yoga, auspicious. I use this word a lot. It's auspicious. It's auspicious time to talk about the teacher-student relationship. What are you feeling about that teacher-student relationship in the realm of healing and yoga and spirituality?
It has been the greatest grace and fortune of this lifetime. And I like hope that I can continue to remain open to receive those blessings, because something that I think gets distorted, and it's like our collective mind and consciousness is moving through trends, right?
Hmm.
So it will change. It won't always be this view, but there's a lot of emphasis on being self-made, on really like sovereignty, and
Hmm.
recognizing, right, that like all is ishvara, like I am everything, everything exists with me, so within me is the teacher and the teachings. But I think what we lose without viewing that with nuance is that all of that exists within me and is available to me, but I am so benefited by someone who knows more than me to show me how to access that, to show me how to hold all of that. And in my life and experience, especially in the world of yoga, but also in energy work, it's through meeting people who were willing to share what they knew with me that I've become who I am now. It's not to say that, like, I'm dependent on them for every single thing in my
Hmm.
life, but there's something about being able to say that, like, hey, you know a little bit more or a lot more than I do. Would you be willing to show me? And I think there's so much magic there that I want to tell everyone I know. Like, teachers, like true teachers, are such a gift. Um, and often we just have to decide we're open and we desire that relationship, and it finds its way into our field.
Yeah, it's almost as though like you were talking about being receptive to the love of the divine or unconditional love. It's also part of the maybe the process is being receptive, being open to a teacher coming into our lives. And I really appreciate what you're saying, because like when I hear you talk about this relationship, there's like these like little like points that kind of pop up, which is like the process helps us become less self obsessed, really, and also start to see how we're interconnected with others. Like we depend on others, like even sociologically, like we need a mother to be born. We need like people to teach us how to walk. We need people to teach us how to talk. If you become a professional in like the medical realm or science, you need people to teach you. But in our current world, which I love that you said is a trend, I appreciate that phrasing of it. We tend to think, well, it's us, it's all us. But even if we look at anything, even material skill, we have the benefit of many years of people working before us so that we can benefit. And let alone something so nuanced as a spiritual awakening or practice, which is it's hard. It's like you were saying with your website. It's like hard to how do, I want to know God, or I want to know myself. To just go at it alone, to me, it feels like, man, I don't know. I think asking for help can make it a lot more efficient. Just at that. So yeah.
And in like the healing work that I do, so especially like with energetic healing, um, in some places healer is almost like a dirty word
Hmm.
because we recognize that the healing potential exists within our own being, but what we gain in the relationship of like seeking out a healer, whether it's an energetic healer or an herbalist or a massage therapist, is we get to occupy the position of receptivity.
Mm,
And that's
yes.
and that's a place we don't get to be so often, because so much of our world, we have to strive, we have to create, we have to transform, we have to push the limits. And like, when do we get the opportunity to be receptive, to be quiet, to be inward, to be soft? And that's what I offer to people, is this nurturing moment, like where you're held, where for this 1 hour, this 90 minutes, like you do not have to make sure that the world keeps spinning, but actually, like, I will hold that weight for you. I will help you move what it is that is maybe burdening you, and offer you an opportunity to like abide in your own true nature. If I'm doing a good job that
Sign me
day.
up. All right, let's do this. Yeah, and what I appreciate is that what the experience you just outlined, which just hearing it, I don't know about all you out there as listeners, but just hearing it makes me like, I almost want to cry. Like I feel like we all need that. I need that. And when we are able to be receptive in such a way, and as you so well, articulated, like let all the to-dos and the controlling of this life and fade and feel held almost unconditionally, um, that we can start to also hold space for that in ourselves and to give that to others in our own way. And this is where the whole idea of teacher and student is also, well, I'll speak from, especially from my background and my path lineage, is that it's actually, we're all part of it. We have teachers, and then we become teachers, and what they gifted us, we in our own unique way can pass on to others. And so it goes down. And having said that, so it goes up, meaning if my teacher had a teacher, and then they 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 had I'm just getting closer to the microphone for effect. Then it goes all the way to, however you want to phrase it, source, God, beginning. So there's also something like being passed on that is essential, or to who we are. So having said all that, why is it so difficult to find a teacher? Is it because there's often not true teachers, or what's going on with that now? What how does one how does that process work? So yeah, you mentioned being receptive, and I believe that. I feel like when I was open, the teacher came. They have that saying.
Mhm.
But what's getting in the way?
Mm. I really have found that there are seasons of teachers. You know, when I
Mm,
first kind of embarked upon this journey of inner knowing, the teachers that I found at that place and time were speaking to that version of Sonia. And
mm,
I think we have to find the nuance and balance between being receptive to learning from someone else and receiving their wisdom, and knowing that when we get that feeling in our gut and our body that says, hey, I think I've got everything
mm.
I can gain from this, student teacher relationship, to trust that we are able to continue on. And it's like some teachers we have for a lifetime or many lifetimes, and some teachers we have for very short periods of time. So I think remembering that we do have agency to move on whenever it is time to move on, and to seek new teachers when we feel ready for it. But I think we can oftentimes get held back in thinking we have to be with someone forever. But it's a joy to learn from more than one person. Um, and I wanted to just like pedal back a little bit to the parampara, because something that I love so much about the lineage of teacher to teacher to teacher to teacher is it also reminds me of like, I didn't invent the spiritual path. I wasn't the first person to discover it, but like by the grace of all of these people who, in varying degrees, have committed their life to preserving this transformational knowledge, these practices, these teachings, these stories, I'm connected back into the web. And I think so many of us are sad and like long for the connection because we feel separate. But the parampara reminds us that we are part of this like tapestry and fabric of love. And I think that's something so beautiful that we gain by being again in the relationship of student and teacher.
That's beautifully put. Yeah, and I think that also goes back to that the feeling of being loved and held and connected. We can feel that in a lineage of teachers. And at the same time, one of my teachers mentioned this to me. Um, we can always, this is how he framed it, we can always enshrine some teacher who really affected us and really pushed us forward in our journey. We can enshrine them in our hearts for always in gratitude. But if they're not at this moment in our journey, um, fanning that spark, then it's okay to move on. So it's like we honor them, but we can also accept and understand that other people may be speaking to us in ways that we can hear at this stage in our journey. And I also feel that, it's teachers are people, and it's I think a lot of times there's, in this current trend in our world, there's a lot of like teachers who fall down, gurus who fall down, and as another one of my teachers would say, um, just because there's like a fake $100 bill doesn't mean that there's a real one. So one of my teachers, Raghunath, would say, yeah, say you have a friend and he's like, hey, can you go buy something for me? I'm going to give you this money. And you go to the store and they're like, this is fake. And then you feel like, what? Like my friend just gave me a fake, whatever, $500 bill. And then you go back to your friend, you're like, hey, what's up, man? Like, your girl, you, whatever, what, you gave me this bill. Like, and then you, oh, I'm sorry, here, take this one. And then you go back and it's the same thing. You go back enough to the grocery store and you feel like this stuff's fake. This is fake. This is not real. And it's giving me pain and sorrow. But it doesn't mean that there is not some real $5 or $100 bills out there. I don't know. What do you think about that analogy? I like that one. That's Raghunath's analogy.
I love that so much because I think it perfectly captures, like, we have one or two or maybe a lot of bad experiences, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't still exist. And, for some of us, it really asks for openness to continue seeking until we do find that authentic relationship, the one that, like, we can go to the store and finally and check out and we get everything we need. And I hope for the person in that experience too, it's like there's an even deeper experience of gratitude, because you're like, I have like waded through the pool to finally find this moment. And I wonder too about the relationship of our ripeness to receive the teachings as well, to when they arrive. Like, we have to be able to hold what it is that's going to be given to us. So maybe we just needed a little bit more time in the kiln to bake before we were really, really ready to hold, the wisdom.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think it's nice to take on that, like it's sort of a little bit of a zooming out, like, um, to be humble with maybe just where we're at now and what we can receive, and be appreciative of what that is. And if we were in a situation with a teacher that was like bad or like traumatizing, yeah, if you hear the analogy of the dollar bill, it might be easy for me to say that, but hard for one to hear that. But at the same time, in any way, if we are going to move forward, and I guess I say this also more as a coach, like if we're going to move forward from trauma, we are going to need the help of others. There are going to be people who come into our life to assist us, to give us some of that love in a way that we didn't receive it before, when it was qualified, yeah, or perverted even, so we're like, I almost feel like in like a macro, I think it's macro, in a macro, we're all here, even if we're not in some official parampara from the East, or yoga, we're all here in this like weave and weft of teacher student, and to not see that is almost like an illusion. In fact, in my tradition, the mother is the first guru.
Mm. Absolutely. And I think we can also, like, I know, like, so many people, I'm sure you've heard this, they're like, my dog is my guru. Like, we have the receptivity to receiving wisdom and love from a source outside of ourselves. So sometimes we just have to remember that desire exists.
Mm.
And I believe Jesus says to his disciples that, like, we need to be like children. And what is meant by that is, in order to really like enter this receptive space, is a humbleness is called for. Because I think oftentimes one of our biggest obstacles to truly expanding, to truly transforming, is the belief that we already got it on lock, that we already did it. I'm already enlightened.
Yeah.
That'll kind of stop us in our tracks from going any deeper, because we assume we don't need or want more. So to occupy the energy of the child is to be in constant wonder of just about anything and everything, and remember that we can always reach our arm up and say, hey ma, hey ma, look at this, or can you help me, can you pick me up? So maybe more like the child.
Yeah, it's beautifully put. And in spiritual journeys and healing, oftentimes we can sort of put ourselves ahead of where we're at times and be like, oh, now I got it. I mean, I know we become empowered too, maybe by some of our healing. And I know for myself, the journey is like kind of been the opposite. I mean, I feel like it's like, I know that there's a lot more that I don't know. I have blocks to in my own heart that I'm trying to open, that I'm trying to work on. And even if I am a teacher, which I am, and I own that as of a service to my teachers and as a service to people who, I can help. I know there's so much I don't know. I know that I'm a very small part of my journey. And furthermore, in my lineage of bhakti yoga, there's an emphasis on like, we're actually to be to be the best teacher, to be like, I'm enlightened, to be like, I got it on lockdown, is to be the servant of the servant of the servant. And even those who are teaching, the mood is, so I find this like, this mood is like outside of the material realm, because it's antithetical to what like our world is like. The mood is, I'm here to teach so that someone I teach, a student of mine, becomes my teacher. Not so I can be like up here lording it over, or what, I want to teach so that I can be humbled again. Isn't that beautiful?
I feel like when this episode comes out, I'm just going to loop that part over and over and over again, because that's such balm for my heart to remember that it's not only about passing on the things we receive because of how deeply they touch us, but that I could actually lift others up further than I could ever go. And to do that with like true, authentic love and joy is like that. Wouldn't that be so incredible?
Yeah, to me, it seems like that's the spiritual world. Like if we're trying, in our own way, that's, not perfect, to embody that mood, that's the spiritual world. Whereas in the material world, which they say like is like a reflection of the spiritual world, it's like we want to be above. We want to be the knower. We want to be the controller. Our growth is so that we can feel like we're better. And obviously we part of going that way is good. We want to get better. We want to grow, but to say it's all so that we can serve others and have them even blossom more, on, it just seems radical. That's like radical grassroots political action right there, like in a deep sense.
That's the radical I'm here for. Yeah. And, one of the first faces of the divine that I just like fell head over heels for with no like conscious understanding of why was Hanuman. And,
Yeah.
Hanuman is such that energy of just relentless, unconditional loving service. And I think one of the leelas of Hanuman that I just gets me every time is, at the very end of the story where Sita has been returned and, Ram is bestowing gifts to everyone who has helped him on this quest, he presents to Hanuman this like beautiful jeweled necklace. And everyone's like, oh my gosh, that's the most that's beyond the value of money. Oh my goodness, what a great gift. And Hanuman's like, I don't want that. And everyone's taken aback because they're like, A, you like didn't want a gift from Ram, and B, this necklace, it's the most perfect thing in the world. But he says to Ram, he's just like, all I desire from you is to be in my heart until the very last beat. And he tears his chest open, and there is Sita and Ram. And like that story, like it just every single time, like centers me back into what is truly valuable. What is it that I seek, even if my bank account was full of millions and millions and millions of
Mm.
dollars, is I'm still going to be seeking that true, lasting love. And where do I get that is from like the desire to serve. Because in service, I also am witnessing myself in that space, right? When Hanuman remembers who he is, he knows that he is Ram too.
Beautiful. Thank you for, I was praying that we would get a little storytelling from Sonia. So that was wonderful and so apropos. These stories for our listeners, they're ways that we can come back. Like Sonia mentioned, like it's a way to come back to that intention when the world and day-to-day life we might forget, we might get caught up, we might get entrapped in other ways of viewing, of operating, to remember to these stories that are just they melt the heart. They're magical, but they melt the heart and they remind us of our true purpose. And as I said earlier, it's like that's what waters the roots of everything else. And in that analogy I gave earlier of the tree, sometimes we get caught like watering a leaf. Like, okay, as long as I have enough money, or if people think I'm this, or if I look or this, or if like, you know, I mean, I'm a small business owner and entrepreneur, so that I can get caught there at times. I'm not going to say I'm not perfect, or I am perfect. I'm not going to say I'm perfect by any means. But if we're watering the leaf of that tree for too long, maybe a couple of drops will go to the roots, but it's we're going to start to shrivel. So thanks for sharing that story, because it definitely watered the roots of my purpose to serve and to connect on this special day.
And I just thank you for bringing in the image of the tree and watering the roots, you know, as a small business person as well. Like, and I've talked about this before. I think part of my karma in my spiritual practice being in relationship to my business now is that it's like, it's unavoidable. Like, the way that I tend to my material needs is like linked with my spiritual practice. But it's so easy. And I really kind of went through a moment in time where the way the outside was looking was not to my liking. It was uncomfortable. And the first human thought is going to be, well, let me reorient and organize everything outside of myself. So I'm like aggressively watering leaves, watering flowers, hoping that like it's all gonna work. And what happened is I overwatered the flowers. So they all the buds and fruit fell off the tree. But it is like we have to go to the inner part of our world, because it's when that transformation happens that it reflects out. And so to circle it back to like, why would someone pursue coaching, or why would they pursue energy work? It's like, because that is the work of the internal illumination. It's the inside job that then, we get steady here, and then our outside world naturally begins to shift, or even just our relationship to it shifts. The eyes that we are viewing the world around us radically change.
So beautifully put. I could not agree more. And yeah, I feel grateful and to have you on the podcast, and grateful that to be reminded of this right now, and hope that others can be through those beautiful words that you shared. We're blessed in a sense to have so many ways to start that inner illumination, to start like putting the batteries in the flashlight and like, going like this, and then like trying to look into the corners. We're blessed now with, yoga and coaching and mental health and, therapy and energy work and herbalism and energy work and herbalism and so, massage. There's so many trauma work. So we're really blessed. And that's, I love to kind of round out this talk to say that that's one of the reasons I wanted to start this podcast, is to hold space for that wide array of healing journeys that are out there for us, and give people exposure to the ability to connect to them and hear our stories, hear my story, other people's stories, your story, your way of phrasing it. Because as you said so eloquently, if we can open our ears and our hearts up, maybe that one teacher is going to speak to us today. If we can work on being receptive. So I would love to hear, like, for the audience, for the listeners, if they wanted to get to know what you do more, or work with you more, or anything like you're doing now, although this episode might be put out after you're doing that, but anything that you're excited about, where do we go, and what would you like to talk about?
Well, thank you. I would love to let people know where to find me. And before I do so, I can't remember if Raghunath said this or if Madhava said this, but it's something that has stuck with me since I've heard it, is that there is a name for God that is meant for every single person. And, so there's infinite names to call to reach God. And, there's one for you, just as there is one for me and there's one for Damodar. And I see all these modalities that are available to us now as, in relationship to like a name for God. Maybe it's not alluring to you, but herbalism is, or like what happens in the container of coaching just inspires you and makes you excited. So to trust that, like, where your heart pulls you is where you're meant to be, and that we're so grateful and blessed to have such a bounty of people doing the work of the heart in so many different ways. Maybe you're an artist, baby, and you just want to make art and you want to find other artists, and that's the way that you find that healing and illumination. Like, celebrate wherever it takes you. But if it does take you to energy work, if it does take you to the world of work that I offer, you can find me on my website, SoniaKaras.com, and I'm sure there will be show notes where you can find the link. And so I do one-on-one healing in person, but also at a distance. We can connect because energy is vast and expansive. So no matter where in the world you are, we can connect and work with the energetic, subtle body to move closer to the story of your heart. I also am I teach energy healing if that's something you're interested in providing for other people. I offer a program called The Healer's Journey, which really takes us through the entire sphere, the entire spiral of the healing work as it tends to our own selves to then be able to offer it to others. And then I also have one-off classes and workshops. I have replays that you can access at any time. And I'm also on the internet. On Instagram is a nice place if you want to be a little bit more, I guess, like fast-paced relationship, because I'm posting stuff there almost every day, and that's Sonia Karas as well.
Wonderful. I'd love to have you come back for another episode sometime. I'm sure we could talk about a lot of great things, continually. So I'll reach out. But for now, thank you so much for being here. And we will put all of Sonia's information on the show notes. And once the episode is out, we'll be sharing more about her and what she does. And I want to ask a final question. If you had the chance to, and you probably have already talked about this, but this is sort of a sound bite. If you were able to give like a couple sentences on, someone came up to you and they said, Sonia, I'm looking to connect better to myself and my relationships and something deeper. What would you tell them? I mean, you could just give them your business card, but outside of that,
I would say place a hand on your heart. And if it's helpful, close your eyes and see if you can send your awareness to the physical beating of your heart, and to feel the aliveness moving through you in this moment. And to just remember what a gift it is to be alive, to have a beating heart. Because this is all we need. This is where it all lives. And anytime it gets overwhelming, confusing, uncertain, frustrating, just return to the beating of your heart. The desire to love and to be loved. End scene.
Beautiful. I was about to jump up and down after that. That was wonderful. Thank you so much. Haribol. Yes, exactly. And yell Haribol. Oh, well, again, thank you so much for this time. And I really enjoyed it and always wanted to talk more with you, Sonia. So hopefully we can do it again sometime soon.
It would be such a pleasure. Thank you so much, Damodar. I am so fortunate to have your association, your friendship. So thank you so much for making time for me and speaking with me today.
Wonderful. Much love. And that's it. Looking forward to our next episode. And for now, I'll see you then. All right. I hope you enjoyed that episode with Sonia Karas. And please check the show notes to connect more with her and what she does. As your empowered connection practice tool, I'm going to ask you all to take some time this week after listening to the episode and connect to what it would be like to give yourself unconditional love, to love yourself fiercely. And in that process, to open up, to be receptive to an idea of source, universe, divine, that can reciprocate and give you, bestow to you, be part of the dance of an unconditional love, of a fierce connection, regardless of the ins and outs of our daily life. What would that look like? What would that feel like for you? Just explore that space. And then I would also invite you, since this was another theme of the episode, to think about the teachers in your life and think about, how do you interact with them? What do they mean to you? How can you give them some gratitude and see more clearly, reflect upon how their influence has played out in your life? One of the themes is that we're even though we're sovereign beings, we actually are so dependent on others. And sometimes we forget in our modern world how much teachers of anything really have gifted us so much. So take a little time, close your eyes, move into yourself, and go into your heart and flashcard some of those teachers in your life, and maybe reach out, pay them some respect, give them some thanks, and then think about, meditate on how you can live out what they gave you in your own way, gifting that to others. Okay, those are 2 meditations to try on. I hope you enjoy the podcast and hopefully see you next time. Peace.